4 days to go now until the U.S. presidential election, and we're keeping a close watch on the key battleground states. Georgia is one of them. Today, the last day for early voting in that state, and so far it's seen an unprecedented turnout. Nearly half of the state's registered voters have already cast their ballots, and that's more than 3.5 million people. That voter engagement has smashed totals from previous years, and that's the quote from the Secretary of State in Georgia, that they are smashing every record for early voting. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about for a moment or two with John Northcott, now the co-host of CBC Radio's World Report, of course, for years, a key part of our show. And John is covering the presidential election. He's live in Savannah, Georgia for us. John, good morning. Great to see you this morning.
Good morning, Heather. Great to be with you, as always.
Listen, so pick up on what I was just saying. The numbers that we're getting, these record numbers, 3.5 million early voters as early voting comes to an end. When you arrived there in Savannah, did you get a sense, long lineups, big motivation and enthusiasm? What have you seen in the early voting?
Yeah, what I would call it is steady. We were at the Civic Center where they've had, and again, Canada, we tend to call it advanced voting. Here they call it early voting, and they've had 2 weeks of early voting through 2 weekends. So close of business today will signal the end of that. And as you say, some 3.5 million of the 7 million, essentially at that 50% mark. So really unprecedented. Brad Raffensperger, Secretary of State, making that announcement late yesterday. What we saw when we went to the Civic Center was, as I say, a steady flow of people, not lined up out the door, but one coming in, another coming in, back and forth. Some of them in Halloween costumes, being as yesterday was Halloween. So watching this sort of slow and steady, but slow and steady over 2 weeks. In Canada, of course, it's a day here and a day there, but this whole idea of 2 weeks of steady early voting taking place here. We'll check out the Civic Center later today and see how they're doing in that last day. But really unprecedented and remarkable to see how, and this time round, the difference being that, well, first off, 4 years ago in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, so there was early voting, but a lot of that was mail-in early voting.
Right.
And a lot of that did not see Republican contributions as well, because Donald Trump had basically cast aspersions on the integrity of early voting and mail-in voting. They realized perhaps in the Republican Party that was a bit of a mistake, and they have now been encouraging people to come out. And that is one reason why we're seeing the numbers as high as they are.
So what is bringing them out? What are some of the key issues for Georgia voters this time?
Well, it's interesting in talking to people here, because what you're seeing is a mix. And that's one reason we came to Georgia, and one reason why we came to Savannah in particular. This was the first place that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz came to after the convention, to right here in Chatham County and Hinesville and the areas that comprise the counties that comprise Savannah and the suburbs of Savannah. And a Democratic candidate has considered this safe territory and hasn't come here for decades. Bill Clinton, the last to do that. But Donald Trump coming here as well. And it's been a long time since a Republican presidential candidate came here. So what we're seeing is the awareness that this place matters. This place could make the difference. But we're also seeing the national issues play out here. And you talk to Republican supporters and they point to the economy. They point to, and again, statistically not necessarily borne out, but the idea being that Trump has the belief, people believe that Trump is the man that can bring them a better economy, lower inflation, lower gas prices, you hear, food prices an issue as well. On the other hand, for the Democrats, not that much different. And we're seeing, for example, a potential movement of black voters from traditionally, at least in the last few decades, from their Democratic support over to the Republicans, because they are concerned about those kitchen tables, those bread and butter issues. But you're also seeing abortion play out here. There is a 6-week abortion ban that is currently being fought back and forth in the courts. They point out that there is not an abortion issue on the ballot, but that means, as they say, they have to make sure that their president, in the case of the Democrats, is in favor of abortion rights. The Republicans, of course, on the other side of that equation. I spoke to a Democratic organizer who is specifically getting an effort underway to have black women come out and vote. Let's listen to her.
If I said I understood that, I would be lying. I really would be lying. But I really think that they believe that in the past he has helped their businesses, he has helped them to make more money. But for me, yes, do I want to make money with my business? Yes. But my family, I want somebody that's going to look out for my family as well.
And there, specifically, you're seeing her address black supporters, male supporters, who may be shifting over to Trump, and referencing the female supporters that she is working to bring out to the polls.
John, we know that both campaigns have been targeting young voters this time round, and I know you've been talking to them. You've been on campus. What are the conversations that you're having, and what are their concerns?
One of the places I wanted to go to when we were coming down here was Savannah State University. Now, it is the oldest HBCU, historically a black university in Georgia, and it was interesting because it looked like a high security with the fences and the guard post, and we said we were here from Canada, we just wanted to speak to some young people. They say, show me your driver's license and come on in. So the Southern hospitality is being shown everywhere we've gone down here, but went up and talked to a number of students. It was lunch hour. They were sitting around and explained where we were from and what we were interested in. Here's what some of them told us.
Our ancestors really wanted this for us, so I feel like we should go out and go vote and stuff like that, because they did all of that for what if we're not going to go vote? So I feel like it's big for us to go vote and go exercise, like they said, exercise our rights, and just go vote.
So Heather, when you hear that, it kind of stops you in your tracks. When you realize, of course, you're in Georgia, a place with a long history of not only slavery but racial segregation, laws, Jim Crow, in terms of the painful and bloody racial history of this place, and then to talk to young people like that and to hear them say, for them, no matter who they're voting for, the issue is to celebrate their ancestors' memory, to exercise their enfranchisement, to be able to go and vote and to pay tribute by voting. Now, that being said, when we talked to who they were going to vote for, the young people that we spoke to said they were going to vote for Kamala all the way. In particular, the young women saying that they were going to vote for her because of the issue over abortion rights. So national issues, bread and butter issues, racial issues, all being played out here in the state of Georgia and in the city of Savannah.
Just before I let you go, I'm going to bring in some live pictures, John, and I don't know if you'll remember these. 4 years ago, we were always looking at this live picture. It's the skyline of Atlanta, and I remember this live picture so well because we were talking about Georgia 4 years ago, Biden over Trump in that state by the narrowest of margins. There is legal action still going on because of what happened 4 years ago. We had recounts, several of them, many days of waiting, and I'm just wondering, as you talk to voters there, what are people anticipating this time?
It's interesting. Of course, you and I covered that extensively, and that, in the interest that had taken place 4 years ago, was one of the reasons why I pitched to come down here to Georgia to be able to see what's unfolding here. Brad Raffensperger, Secretary of State, the man who, in that infamous phone call from Donald Trump, remember, all I need is 11,780 votes. So that idea being that, and eventually resulting in criminal charges against Donald Trump for that alleged interference in the election. What we're hearing this time, and remember, Brad Raffensperger and the state government of this state are Republicans. Two Democratic senators going to Washington, but the state itself is run by Republicans. And that tension back and forth between state officials and Trump officials played out not just on those days after the election day 4 years ago, but as one activist and one politically involved person here told me, Trump has never left this state. Between the controversy and the prosecutions and the presence, they argue that he has never left this state over the last 4 years. What we are hearing, to answer your question, Heather, is that both the state and the people on the ground here are very confident that they have a robust system now in terms of election protection results. Arguably, they always were well protected. But the argument now is that with paper ballots, with oversight, with what they have in place, they are actually predicting an early wrap-up. Remember, going back to those advanced polls or those early polls as well, with so many of those votes already in, they are talking about a definitive result by perhaps 10 p.m. and even, or at the latest, by midnight on Election Day. So we'll see, but a lot of confidence at every level. That's observers, that's party people, and that's state officials. That's what we're hearing, confidence in the election results this time around.
It is interesting. There are some who think we won't have any idea for days after the actual vote, but then there are indications coming from states like Georgia that this could be wrapped up much earlier than some think. So we will see, and it's great to have you there, John, in position to bring us all of that reporting. Thank you so much for sharing your conversations. We will be listening. Really appreciate it, John.
All the best.